Hey everyone, today I'm here to talk about what you need to know about Goosebumps books, and I'm going to recommend 3 Goosebumps books if you've never read one before. So, Goosebumps books are essentially horror novellas for kids ages 8 to 13. They're about 120 pages in length on average. Some of them are a little bit longer. Some of the newer ones go up to 150 or 160 pages in length. Sometimes they're a little bit shorter, like 105 or 110 pages, but they usually fall in around the 120 page mark, so they're relatively short. I can usually sit down and read a Goosebumps book in about an hour or so. It doesn't take that long to get through them. And another thing about Goosebumps book is the chapters are very short, usually only a few pages each, sometimes only like a page each. And the chapters end on a cliffhanger. And the reason for that is to kind of help keep the reader engaged, as these books are geared towards younger kids. Younger kids usually don't have as much of an attention span as adults do, obviously. So, to kind of help keep the reader engaged and interested in the story, R.L. Stine keeps the chapters short and ends them on a cliffhanger. So, Goosebumps books are, like I said, they're horror stories for the most part, but there's a lot of cross genre Goosebumps books, and he definitely blends various elements together to kind of make these books what they are. There's a lot of comedy in them, sci-fi, sometimes elements of fantasy and other things going on in there as well, even though a large part of Goosebumps books is like the supernatural horror type stuff. So yeah, guys, I'm going to go through and give you 3 Goosebumps books I want to recommend that you read if you've never read one of these before. And I actually decided to make this video because not too long ago I had a couple of people ask me, I've never read a Goosebumps book before, which one would you recommend starting with? Or which one is the most readily available? So I picked out 3 books here that I'm going to recommend to you if you've never read one before. 2 of these books are very popular Goosebumps books, and the first one on the list is not quite as popular, but again, this is just my opinion of what I think the best entry-level type Goosebumps books are. So let's start out with the first one on the list, and it is number 8 from the original series, The Girl Who Cried Monster. Now, this book has a very basic story to it. It's not very complex. There's not a lot going on here. Basically, she finds her librarian doing some weird, strange behavior, which is eating bugs. She finds him eating these flies and stuff during like the closing hours of the library when no one else is around, and he's just very strange and talks to himself. And she starts getting these weird ideas. She thinks he might be a monster, as implied by the title of the story. It's pretty obvious what's going on here. Pretty straightforward. Not a super complex story or anything. But the reason I decided to include this on my list is because I feel like this is a very foundational type of Goosebumps book. R.L. Stine would go on to use the plot and the structure of this book in countless other Goosebumps books in the future. This is a plot that he's reused countless times over, usually done better in other Goosebumps books, but I feel like this is a great starting point because it's a very simple story, and it's also a good book. I really enjoy this one. I really love this book. Again, this one doesn't age quite as well as some of the other Goosebumps books, but to me, this is a very good example of what a Goosebumps book is. It's a very simple, straightforward story. There's some twists and turns in it that you might not see coming. There's always, like some twist endings and weird reveals and stuff that happen throughout Goosebumps stories, and this one is no exception. But again, this to me is just one of the Goosebumps books that kind of started the gears moving, like kind of got the ball rolling of what Goosebumps was going to be. This was one of the very first plot structures R.L. Stine come up with in this sense of what happens in this book, and as I've already mentioned, he would kind of continue to reuse the plot structure in this one and a bunch of other Goosebumps books. But yeah, this one is just to me a classic, and I think this would be a great book to start out with. Again, this isn't one that's one of the most popular Goosebumps books, but it's a good book. I enjoy it, and it's a good example, I think, of what Goosebumps has to offer. Next up on the list, and this one is probably the most popular Goosebumps book there is, to be honest, and that is The Haunted Mask. Now, this book has spawned countless sequels, spin-offs. It was made into a TV episode. I believe the very first Goosebumps TV episode was made after this book. And this is also the author's, R.L. Stine's, personal favorite Goosebumps book he's ever written. And with all of that said, it's all for very good reason. This book really is one of the best Goosebumps book in the series. It's not my personal favorite. I don't even know if it's one of my personal favorites, maybe in like my top 20 or something. But I can see why this book is popular as it is, because the story being told here is fairly simple as well. It's a little bit more complex than the last book I showed you, The Girl Who Cried Monster. Basically, this young girl named Carly Beth, she gets this mask for Halloween, and it's, this really creepy, scary mask. It's basically described as kind of how it appears on the cover. And when she puts it on, she finds out that the mask doesn't come off. And the mask kind of turns her into this darker side of herself. Like her evil nature comes out and she becomes like this angry, bitter person. And yeah, guys, this is a great book. This is just a really popular Goosebumps book, but for good reason. What I also really like about this Goosebumps book is there's a really good message to it. There's some themes behind this one in regards to love and forgiveness. This is kind of like a tale of good versus evil in a way. And if you want to analyze the story here, you can and dig deep. And there's a lot of substance to it, even though the story is so simple. And that's what I really like about this book, because a lot of Goosebumps books, I will admit, there's really not much there other than just cheap entertainment, cheap thrills. Not a lot of them have actual substance to the stories, but this one does. And this is just a really good book. It has just kind of like a feel-good message to it, but at the same time, it gets kind of dark and scary. This is a great Goosebumps book, guys. It's a very popular one, but for a reason. You really can't go wrong with the Haunted Mask. So yeah, that's why I have it as number 2 on this list of Goosebumps books I would recommend starting with. And the third one I would recommend starting with is also another very popular Goosebumps book that has spawned sequels, spin-offs, and even a whole series of its own. And that is Goosebumps One Day at Horrorland. This is number 16 in the series. Now, a lot of Goosebumps books incorporate a lot of humor and comedy into them, as does this one. This is, I think, one of the earliest Goosebumps books that explores more of that humor and comedy aspect that these books tend to have, but this one does it very well. A lot of them go way too far and rely on humor more than anything else, and it kind of detracts from the rest of the story. But this one has a perfect balance of humor, scariness, creepiness, suspense, just everything. This one does it very, very well. There's lots of funny moments in here, but this is also a really creepy story, very unique and creative. To me, this is the epitome of what a Goosebumps book should be. It has all of the elements that make up a good Goosebumps book and just puts it together and blends it so well. This also happens to be one of my favorite Goosebumps books of all time, probably in my top 5 favorite Goosebumps books of all time from all the series, or maybe top 10, I don't know. But yeah, guys, this is a really good Goosebumps book. And as I said too, this one is another super popular one that this one was made into a TV episode and it has sequels, but it's as popular as it is for a reason. Don't just think that because everyone, likes this book, I would recommend this one. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it other than I think this would make a good entry-level Goosebumps book. It's one of the best books, and yeah, guys, if you're thinking about starting with the Goosebumps book and you're not sure which one you want to start with, this is just my opinion, of course, but I would recommend starting with one of these 3. These 2, again, are the more popular ones, so maybe one of those. This one is just more my opinion, but I decided to include this one on the list because it's a very foundational Goosebumps book to me. It kind of encapsulates what the Goosebumps series is about, the basic plot structure, and everything that the books tend to use. So yeah, guys, those are my books I would recommend to you. And another thing, too, to keep in mind is for a lot of Goosebumps fans, including myself, we grew up with these books, so we have a lot of nostalgia and sentimental value for them. And if you're an adult and you've never read a Goosebumps book before, it might not hit you quite the same way as it does us. You might not get quite the same level of enjoyment out of them. One thing to keep in mind is that these books just are geared towards kids, and going into them, you're going to have to suspend your disbelief a lot. Or not a lot, but a little bit at least. there are issues with logic and sometimes some plot holes here and there in Goosebumps stories, just things that don't really make sense. The one thing, good example, is the parents in Goosebumps books are usually kind of ridiculous. They never believe their kids, and they're just not very realistic characters, but that they're just kind of there to serve the story. So that's just an example. But yeah, if you want to try checking out a Goosebumps book, guys, I would recommend maybe starting with one of those three. Just keep in mind that you're going to have to suspend your disbelief a little bit and go into it with the mindset that these books are written for kids. And I think you'll still enjoy them. I think you'll still have a good time. If you do decide to read one, you've never read one before, let me know down in the comments how it goes, what you thought of it. I'm excited to hear your guys' thoughts. I love Goosebumps books. Of course, I grew up with them, so it's a little bit different. Naturally, I love them as much as I do. These books really just got me into reading a lot more. I was always into reading, but these ones, I just love Goosebumps, guys, and I just want to share my love for these books a little bit. And so, yeah, let me know if you decide to read a Goosebumps book and what you guys think of it. Thanks for watching.